Welcome to Leadership in Tech, a bi-weekly podcast series on software engineering and product development. I'm your host, Pradipe Yoggi, a senior engineering leader with more than a decade of senior leadership experience in public and PE-backed tech companies. The views expressed by me or my guests are not the views of my employer or those of my guests' employers. Take a listen, share, subscribe, and comment. Welcome to Leadership in Tech. This is a new episode, and I have my guest here, Vikas Mittal. He is the CEO and founder of GTEN. Vikas, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Pradeep. Thanks for inviting me on your show.
Yes. So tell us a little bit about, GTEN and how you ended up founding and becoming the CEO of GTEN.
So I think when we started GTEN, actually, is a long story back. So a lot of people don't know what's the full form of the word GTEN itself. So this actually started almost a decade back when me and some of my friends wanted to build a network of technology enthusiasts, people who wanted to talk about technology, think about technology, not in the current state, but what it was going to look like a decade ahead of. So the full form of GTEN was at that time was Global Technology Enthusiast Network. That is how the term GTEN came into play. And but when I finally moved out of my corporate, we continued with that term and we just made a minor adjustment to the name. Now we are Global Technology Experts Network. That is how we operate. So GTEN as a company, we are a technology consulting firm. We essentially work with product engineering firms, likes of Cisco, SAP, Walmart, and Google. These are our primary customers, and we are working with them on co-developing and co-engineering solutions for the future. That is how the team has been operating, and that is what actually excited me to become or come part of GTEN as a CEO and move out of corporate.
That's an interesting story of the name of the company and its evolution. So, tell us your idea of a CEO, because I saw on your LinkedIn profile that you have different definitions of the word CEO based on who the stakeholder is. So, tell us a bit about that.
See, for long, I've been like working in corporates for almost 2.5 decades. I always had that impression right from my founding days as a employee to become a CXO myself in the corporate. The CEOs was always looked upon as a chief executive officer, someone sitting in a corner corner office with corner large office with big windows. But what I really realized, CEOs like that are fine, but the people I idealize as CEO are basically Jeff Bezos and Elon Musk kind of people who are actually on the ground working with the right stakeholders. And every stakeholder, they come across as a different individual. And that is how I define my role as a CEO in G10 for my customers and their chief experience officer. Because for a customer, what matters is what experience they have with your company and with your people. For my team, I'm the chief enabling officer because my role as a CEO is not to reprimand them, is to basically give them tools, give them the liberty, and enable them to deliver on the objectives which they want to do. For our partners, I am the chief engagement officer because I essentially help them to engage with the right stakeholders within my organization and my group to ensure that all of us have a smooth journey and experience when looking to deliver on a common vision.
Got it. Interesting. I know that you have this successful LinkedIn group for software testing and automation, if I'm recalling the name right.
Yes.
And it has, I believe, close to 500,000 users or more. I mean, members or more, and it's a private group. So, just curious, how did you come to start it? Why did you start it, and how did you end up growing it into such a big group?
I would say that I'm blessed to have people like you on the network who truly believe that even in today's world that quality testing and automation matter. And the I think the differentiation about our group is that it's a group where people are able to openly share their point of view, thoughts, and opinion. We try to keep the content fun through videos, through messages, through memes, but to use that content to pass on a more serious messaging. I'm part of like almost 30 odd groups in LinkedIn, but most of the groups are dead. And like you rightly said, to build organically a group of more than half a million people, and where uh, I think out of half a million people, at least 10% are senior stakeholders, CXOs in their own organizations. And all of them contribute to meaningful conversation. I think that is what has been helping us to grow this group organically over a period of time, where people actually see some really, really senior folks participating, communicating, and conversing. One thing which has also helped is the group self-regulate and self-discipline itself in terms of not allowing any job posts. So we don't have any job posts, any marketing post on our group. It is always about content around engineering and testing in specific.
Okay. And it's taken 10 years, you said, to go from zero to.
It's almost almost a decade now. And one of the agenda items we are working on next year is to create a conference out of this group. So
Oh,
that
wow.
is what I'm working on right now. To uh, and the agenda there also is we're looking only for first time speakers. So the senior guys who I have on the group, they will not be speaking on the conference. They'll basically be playing the role of a mentor. And the others, we're looking at first time speakers who have never spoken in any conference to take the stage.
That sounds like a very good plan. So tell me how you got started in tech.
So my journey in tech was actually again fairly interesting. So during my school days, as you know, in India in the 90s, you only had three career paths to choose from.
Yeah.
You can either be a doctor, you can either be an engineer or a chartered accountant. Now, coming from a business family through and through, my original interest was to be a doctor, influenced by one of my cousins. And unfortunately, I could not get an admission in MBBS. Sorry, I got an admission in MBBS, but I wanted to be a dental surgeon, not a regular doctor. They did not allow me a seat. At that time, tech in India around late 90s was picking up. And that is when one of my cousins, who was in the US at that time, introduced me, why don't you try your hands at tech and why don't you join a course? So that is where I started working with a company as an intern, which created me to have more interest in tech. And it's looked like more like problem solving, which probably helped me get into tech.
Got it. Fascinating. So you mentioned that you're from a family of business people, a business background. Is that what got started you in Sunshine Ventures as somebody who developed a pan-India network for Revlon?
Yes, so that's typical of our community. So we are like Baniyas or Marwaris. That's typical of our community that everybody, because for us, the dinner conversations or the conversation when you are together as a family, it's not about cricket or it's not about movies. It's always about business. And that is how I got into building something of my own. Again, fortunately, I was there in India at the right time because at that time, Indian market was being opened up by the government of India, like mid 90s.
Yeah.
And the only point that time was any foreign company, for them to come to India, they needed a JV. So Revlon and I worked with a Modi group in India to create a joint venture where I had the opportunity to strategize, plan, and create the complete distribution network for Revlon in India. And Pradeep, that was also one of the early areas where I actually implemented tech at scale. So computers were not that common in India in late 90s, but that was the opportunity to build on a minuscule or skeletal computer network available to you with the dial-up internet connection, not broadband.
Yeah. Oh, that's fascinating. I'm sure that early experience you had as a 20 something played a huge part in starting G10 and growing it and being the CEO right now, right?
It actually played a really big part in terms of how I looked at every corporate step for me as well. Like in my corporate journey, the reason I had an accelerated growth was I never looked at any job as essentially a job. I always went into any job as a business owner or with that mindset of a business owner, whether I was a developer or an architect, the point or the thought process is always about how can I create value? What is the business value of what I'm doing today? So that ability to always identify and ask questions for the big picture really helped me to grow also in my career.
Fascinating. Some takeaways for me are like the importance of family dinner conversations and how it shapes the future of an individual. Uh, and and I think how that ends up influencing a person over the long term. And
Right.
it's not just an influence on that one child or one individual, right? It is now you see your actions are impacting others positively, right? You're reaching probably hundreds of people or thousands of senior engineering leaders. I mean, it's a ripple effect. And then there's all these people in the group that you have, the testing and automation group. So I think the importance of, I think, family and family conversation and mentoring play a huge part in shaping the future of society, I think.
Absolutely true. And I think one of the you live in the East Coast, which is actually the hub of a lot of Jewish community. And also the other influence on me personally from a mindset of an entrepreneur has been the Jewish community. Because I have a lot of friends and customers from Israel and the Jewish community basically because these guys are the pioneers for any startup coming in any new tech, right? I, During one of my visits to Israel, one thing which I learned in a coffee shop, which was very profound, was the conversations there were not only about the new ventures, the new startups, right? They were building. There were two celebrations happening in the same cafe where I was in Tel Aviv, which are about two startups which failed to scale. That was my first experience in life, to be honest, after more than 2 decades in corporate, where I actually saw people, family, friends, and even investors in those two startups coming in to celebrate a failure.
Wow.
That truly impacted my mindset that, okay, failures are not to be frowned upon. It is essentially one step more towards your final uh, destination or goal that you learned what did not work last time to improve on for the next time.
Wow. I'm having goosebumps when you said that story. It's remarkable that, when a culture celebrates not just success, but also the effort to achieve
Yes.
success, but didn't turn out that way, so that the person can move on and then do something else that might end up being successful. Wow. That's it's really a closure if you think about it, right? It's a closure on something that you tried and it didn't work. Okay, great.
And the bigger messaging there is that there's no shame in failing. I think
Yes.
that stigma of a failed startup or a failed entrepreneur, if you're celebrating failures, you don't have that stigma, you don't have that tag. So I
Right.
think that also motivates people to take that risk, try something, because that's the only path to grow.
Yeah. No, that's phenomenal. That's a huge mindset shift that could. I mean, and now I understand why Israel is like there's teeming
Yes.
with startups all the time, right? Like they're always on the cutting edge of everything, creating new innovations, and that will only be possible if such a mindset is brought about culturally. Thank you for sharing that. That's really very very insightful, and not quite a common thing that you see in the out. If you looked at LinkedIn or any of the social media, it's only success that gets celebrated, right? And yeah, this is so refreshing. Thank you for that. Now, in our earlier conversations, you had mentioned that you do mentor, uh, younger people that are coming into the workforce or coming into leadership roles, trying to start up. Tell us a bit about like how long you've been doing that. What's the impact that you've had, and why you started doing it?
So actually, I started working on this thing almost, I would say, more than a decade back. During my first role as a lead, I struggled. I struggled in my first role as a lead. Unfortunately, I was given And I would say, in hindsight, I was fortunate to get that team. I, my average experience of the first team I managed as a manager was 13 years. And I was only 7 years of experience at that time.
Got
So everyone in my team was much older, much more experienced than me. And those guys gave me a hard time because obviously nobody expects a manager who's half your age and experience to be managing a large team of 30 odd people. During that time, I had nobody to look around and help me understand what mistakes I was making. And I did make my own fair share of mistakes. So when I got my first opportunity to be at a senior level a decade and a half back, one thing which I promised to my team is that I would be there for you whenever you need me. But when I started having these conversations with people who I was managing as part of my business unit, is that the struggle is not only for me or my business unit. It essentially exists all across the industry, irrespective of which industry segment you belong, tech, marketing, sales, it is everywhere. That is when for the first time, I wrote a post almost 12 years back on LinkedIn, open post, that I am so and so. This is my experience. I'm looking to mentor people, but I would take up mentorship only for people who are between experience range of 8 to 14 years. Nothing below, nothing above 8 and 14, because that is a vulnerable experience range. And second, I would be taking only a limited number of people as mentors, uh, mentees in that group. My first LinkedIn post got me almost around 85, 90 people responding that, okay, they would like to have a conversation. Finally, I selected 6 people. Now, for last decade or so, every year I reach out now. I don't need to write LinkedIn post now, fortunately, because throughout the year, people keep on reaching out to me. So I get on an average around 70 to 80 requests every week for people to uh, find time with me, reach out to me, and help me mentor them. And now I'm not the only one who does it. I have a group of people, friends now. Together, we pick around 45 to 50 individuals every year who we personally mentor from, and we shortlist them from almost around 1,000 plus requests which we get over the year to those 50 people. A lot of people reach out to you, but they're not really serious about the career themselves. And you can find out when you send them a questionnaire to fill, when you send them a survey to do, what is the percentage of completion. And you will be surprised, not more than 10% people actually put in the effort to give an honest, detailed explanation and answer. This thing picked up for us during COVID time. During COVID time, one thing which I've never published or never mentioned anywhere, a lot of people were losing jobs. And that is where my LinkedIn network stood with me. And we were able to help almost 1,000 people secure jobs during that time when nobody was hiring.
Wow.
And that was all my network, my friends' network, and the people who we have mentored over the years. So I think that has been the biggest uh, I would say the gain I had from mentoring. It has helped me personally improve as a person, also as a leader for my team.
Wow. That's a very inspiring and remarkable story about really giving back and taking responsibility for the future generation of leaders. Um, Quite inspiring, and I feel like I got some ideas on how to contribute back. Right, so that's always a question. One of the things that is not highlighted in the tech industry, I think, so much is if you look at how LinkedIn often surfaces content, it is about individual achievement, right? Somebody did something, they started this company, they scaled it, there is a success, this product is a success, etc., etc. But then there's a whole community of people behind that leader that help make that happen. They're certainly not in the limelight. But then there is also aspiring people that have a case of a failure that want to transform it into a success and so on. And I think what you are doing is not just you being successful yourself as an individual entrepreneur and a businessman and a tech leader, but also creating a community of leaders through, your friend circle, mentoring others, and creating new leaders. I think this is the kind of content that needs to be coming out more, right? Because it's really sets a good example of like how you 10x everything in tech and leadership. Because it's not a single player game; it's always a multiplayer game, and you need teams and armies of huge talent.
Absolutely. And I think I would say, in hindsight, if I look at it, whatever I've been doing for last decade and a half is helping now in my journey as an entrepreneur. Because see, one thing which I firmly believe is if you do good in the world, it comes back to you as a multiplier, like you said. It comes back to you in 10x. So all the a lot of people come and ask me, okay, how are you doing selling? How are you doing? How are you reaching out to customers uh, for your business now? And to be the honest answer is we don't. Majority of our business is inward, is through reference. And most of the time, it is through people with whom I have worked probably a decade back, or with people with whom we are currently working. They are moving to another company or a position. They refer us in to these businesses, or they refer us to a person they know. Because one thing which I fundamentally believe in, and now I'm realizing it more and more, is that humans work with humans. The corporate brand name or the corporate to whom you belong definitely helps, but it's like a college degree from a top Ivy League college. It's only your first step in the door. Post that, as you would have done repeatedly yourself as well in your career, your education helps you only to get you inside the door. Post that, it's your hard work, it's your honesty, it's your deliverables, commitment, and consistency, which a customer notices and gives you more and more after that. So I think that is what essentially I believe LinkedIn or what I've been doing for last decade and a half with my friends and my network is helping us now in a slow and steady way.
Good, that's nice. Yeah, I had a question in my mind about how your online presence has helped with your branding. I think you answered that question already.
So I'll just add on to that part. A lot of people, when I was starting out, told me, and it's actually a real and a fun thing both. So I actively started publishing on LinkedIn only after November 2023. Before that, I was like 99% people on LinkedIn, probably pushing a post only when I changed a job or when I had a certification or some accomplishment. Most of the time, I was a passive user of LinkedIn, just watching what others are posting. November 2023 is when I actually said, okay, now I'll start publishing the content regularly. I'll start sharing my experiences regularly and start writing a daily post. My LinkedIn reach or the post impressions for LinkedIn started growing. In 2024, I had almost 19 million impressions on my LinkedIn content in a year.
Wow.
2025, I already have around 25 million impressions on the content. Impressions actually are valuable, but what is more valuable than impressions is the number of unique LinkedIn users you are able to reach. Because that essentially is what people are engaging with you. When I started, I had 40 people seeing my content on an average a week. Today, I have almost 6 to 7,000 people visiting my LinkedIn profile every week, and my reach today from my content is close to a million plus uh, users, unique users on LinkedIn in the last 2 years.
Wow.
And two of my big contracts, which we won in GTEN, have both come through LinkedIn.
Wow. That's phenomenal.
But
So,
again, organic growth, consistency, and
right,
organic growth.
right. I think you answered like consistency as one of the key aspects. So you post daily, basically. That's your consistency.
I post daily now, daily, and a lot of people don't realize that I don't write the content daily. So this is again a hack which I
Right.
can share. I identify topics which I want to write. I create a theme for a month. I identify topics for me to write. When I'm reading something, I find a topic, I make a note of it that in my physical diary. I still maintain a physical diary in the digital world. But every weekend, I spend now as I've got better. I spend almost a couple of hours every weekend, both Saturdays and Sundays, like 4 hours every weekend, to create and schedule content for the next 7 to 8 days.
Right.
So I'm not actually posting on LinkedIn on a daily basis. I create content, identify the theme, and schedule the content. But just posting the content will not grow your readership or people engaging with you. When people are actually commenting on your post, how you engage with them, and the other thing is how you engage with the posts from other people in your domain. That creates the, like you said, the ripple effect, because then people with like mindset start to navigating or gravitating towards your post as well, and you can have more meaningful conversation.
That's phenomenal. Yeah, I do the same for my podcast. I record a podcast, I edit it, and I create 2 weeks worth of content in one weekend, and it just shows up.
Perfect.
So,
Yeah.
right, it's a yeah, it's a concerted effort on a weekend, but the effect goes on for 2 weeks. So, but
Absolutely. Like,
it's good to know that you've been doing that a lot longer and more systematically. I have more recently I started just learning machine learning on my own, just to delve into the math and everything. And I decided, one of the things you get into as a challenge when you're learning something new is because you have so many other commitments in life.
yes.
The consistency is a factor. It never stays very consistent. So I thought, let me make myself accountable by saying I'm going to post one thing about machine learning. Now it forces me to have content ready to post, which means I first have to study it, understand it, and then be able to summarize it in a form that is usable for somebody else. So, so that's another thing that one of the things I've learned is, when it comes to accountability, learning something new, doing something new, or starting something new, it's probably best when it's done in a very public fashion. This is just my view, but it just
No,
keeps you accountable. So,
no, you're absolutely correct. I think that is one thing which definitely helps. If you, because otherwise your goals are your goals. If and if you're not shared them with anyone that you're looking to achieve these goals and objectives in a year, you can just let it slip. But if once you're shared with someone else, you kind of feel that accountability that yeah, now people know about it. You have to do it. But I think what you're doing is a huge effort. Podcast is a huge effort, more effort than creating content and LinkedIn posts. Because I did a couple of podcasts and it was tough. It is tough.
yeah, that's what I realized. After I launched my podcast, I realized, holy shoot, why did I do this? you know, But thankfully, I don't know when you tried your podcast, but now there are tools that make it simpler with AI enabled. Like Riverside has AI feature that immensely helps with editing and transcription, and it also surfaces clips that it thinks is really good to highlight. So if I wasn't having these AI tools assisting me, I would have to pay somebody to do it, or I would just abandon it. So and then and then I do a summary of the podcast as an article that is actually done with AI, right? Like I ask it to summarize the transcript in article form, and I just have to review it. It's like 5 minutes or 10 minutes, and I'm done.
AI is definitely a game changer in the content creation space. Definitely a huge advantage.
Yeah. So on that topic of AI, how do you see AI changing the software development process? I know content process is definitely changing, and we are all probably using it already. But in the software development space, from your experience, the vantage point of being a service provider that is providing engineering services, as well as probably doing your own development activities within your organization, how do you see AI influencing the process?
So AI is definitely making it a lot interesting. I'll put it that way. If you would have asked me this question a year back, uh, I might have given a very, very different answer to what I can tell you now, because now we have experimented with AI in our projects, in our engineering life cycle for more than 18 months now. And to be honest, I've been using data science and machine learning in engineering for more than a decade. So before all this noise of self-healing capability, predictive analytics came into picture in the last 3, 4 years, I had already done that a decade back with my customers. So I knew. But I think where AI is going to be interesting is in three areas, if I understand correctly from my experience till now. The first big advantage which I see with AI is creating the impact analysis. Because one thing which in an engineering, and you being an engineering leader yourself, you all we all know that we create user stories, but most of the user stories are in the context of what it has to achieve. It does not really carry what is the impact of this story on the overall scope of the project or the overall functionality of the project. Because if it's a long running product or a project, people change. Maybe the new guy who's writing the story doesn't really have the full background or the impact, the business view. With AI, we are able to do that for a lot of our customers, where we are able to contextualize every user story, tag it to the feedback, customer feedback, which we are seeing from sentiment analysis and the production usage logs to create the impact scenario for business, for tech, and for implementation. That is one area where AI is really helping us to find the gaps in requirements, create impact analysis, and create a big picture view for everyone. The second part, which a lot of my dev friends and the dev leadership don't like, is allowing us to handle the laziness of developers when it comes to testing and quality. So in a lot of our projects now, we are using AI as a junior developer with a senior dev, where the senior dev is still writing the code, but as always, the senior dev is not interested in writing the unit test code or the integration test code. That is where we are basically leveraging AI tooling and AI algorithms to create that unit and integration test bed. Because in quality, the fundamental is as closer you are to the code, the faster, cheaper, and better it is to test. That is the second area where I'm seeing AI being used. The third area, which where I am personally experimenting and we're seeing success of AI, is the customer sentiment and usage analysis, because that was a huge area of gap with a ocean of information available to engineering, but due to lack of time, lack of tools, or lack of interest, it was never tapped into. But with like we work with a lot of startups, we work with a lot of product engineering firms. We now tap into that information to extract valuable insights of what the team should be focusing on building or addressing. Because that helps us to prioritize where the money is being spent in engineering. I know it may sound a little different from what others are propagating about writing test cases, writing automation scripts, self-healing. Those are all like peripherals which you can achieve with AI. But why would I basically use a supercomputer or a huge capability to do tasks which I can do with better engineering principles and practices myself? That is our take on AI, on where AI should actually be used and leveraged, and where it actually makes a big dollar impact.
Wow, that is definitely a new insight or a new perspective that I'm getting from what you're saying, and I think it's probably the better use case to be able to deploy your human resources in the best possible manner, identify areas where I need to really put people in, and yeah, and things like sentiment analysis, which AI is fantastic at, leveraging that to define where you should put more effort or like add more test cases and so forth. It's awesome. So from what you were just saying, I go back to that business background that you started with, both from your family being business oriented as well as your early entrepreneurial ventures on that, and over the years, I think you've had several P&L responsibilities in multiple organizations. What has been like some takeaways from that, from your experience being P&L focused and having responsibility for P&L?
I think I would talk about few elements which a lot of people talk about is when you're putting in on the hat of a leader or a P&L owner. I think a lot of times people focus too much on the top line or the bottom line. So as a P&L leader, that is essentially what you are focusing on. That what is the top line you want to achieve and what is the profitability you want to achieve. One thing which I've realized now running as my business also, revenue is important, profit is important, but the king of the game is your cash flow. So as a P&L leader now and always, I was always focused on going after more profitable deals which bring immediate cash and which maintain consistent cash flow. So that is the one thing which I realized as a P&L leader which you should do. The second element which I think is as a P&L leader which is important is for you to understand how your organization dynamics and your customers' organization dynamics really work. Because you may have a great proposal, you may have a great technology solution, but it will not be implemented if you don't understand what is their motivation to do any project. What is the OKR of the business leader with whom you are dealing, and how he creates a budget, and what are the factors he keeps in mind to make a decision. So I think if you have the clear understanding of your customer landscape on these four criteria, that also helps you to make your P&L look more green than red over a period of time.
Okay, that's awesome. Okay, good. So, so the four principles or four key concepts in P&L you mentioned. One is cash flow, another is uh,
Budgeting
budgeting and profitability overall, right? What is the fourth one?
and the what is like if you look at the four key factors for you to have a green P&L is what is your cash flow, what is the profitability of the deals you're going in, how the budgeting is done in your own organization and your customers' organization, and fourth, what is the OKR or the KRA of your customer business leader for them to make a decision.
Ah,
If you're running a services organization or any organization for that matter, if you understand these four elements, then you can construct a profitable deal for everyone.
fantastic. Thank you. Having led many organizations over the years, large groups of teams and engineering organizations, are there any myths in leadership and management that you have uncovered?
Oh, there are so many myths which exist, which even I used to believe in my early stage of my career. The biggest myth I always had was my manager has the answer for everything in the world. When I took up the role of a manager, I believed at that time that now I have the answers for all the problems. So that's the biggest myth. A good manager does not have answers for everything. A good manager only has an understanding on what is a better question to ask to enable the team to discover the answers on their own. I think your role as a manager is not to have all the answers, is to have all the right questions which enable your team to find the answers on their own. So then only you're making them self-reliant, self-independent, and giving you the space for you to grow in your career vertically. Otherwise, you'll just be part of the BAU run machine and not able to focus on your own growth. Forget about your team's growth. The second thing which I believe in corporate, we all have a fetish around meetings. Everybody you go around shows their calendar. See how busy I am. My calendar is completely packed. People believe in the typical CXOs. They believe the more meetings you have, the better aligned the team is. What I have noticed, spending almost a decade in a CXO with multiple companies, the more meetings you have, the more disalignment you have in the company. I think the companies which are more successful are the ones who have a clear channel of communication, a clear ownership structure, and trust their people that they would execute. and not ask for status every 30 minutes or every end of the day. You won't believe in G10, we don't have that culture at all. We have no meetings, except for probably a 15-minute daily stand which the team has. We don't ask for status. The entire team publishes status on their own every day on Slack.
Wow.
The third thing, which I believe is the biggest myth, and I think it goes back to a story which I always read, is everyone should be treated as equal in an organization. Fairness is not about treating everyone as equal. Fairness is to identify who brings what to the table and then giving them opportunity and feedback as per what or how that individual is. I think that is one thing which the so-called HR policies need to change, is they have to basically give the power and the liberty for managers or the team leads to treat every individual in their team as the potential that individual is. So to implement a fair policy, at times we become too harsh on our people. Like, just to talk about work from office policy. In G10, we have never had a work from office policy. We have been remote 100% from the very beginning. But that does not mean that we don't ask some people to come to office. We obviously ask some people to come to office if we believe that their potential or their productivity can improve with some guidance. But that does not mean that we force everyone else also who is performing exceptionally well from their home, living with their parents, to come to office as well, because we want to be fair to everyone. That is again that is one thing. And the fourth last point which I want to mention is, at least in the services sector, there's a lot of meme going about Narayan Murthy about 70 hours of working and everything. What I have fundamentally believed always is that number of hours you spend in the office does not determine your performance.
Right.
So we don't measure or reward people by the number of hours they have filled in the timesheet. We always measure people of what is the impact of the output they have produced, not by the number of hours. Because it can be that I'm smart or somebody in my team is smart and they can do the same job in 30 minutes, which the other guy is taking 6 hours to do. So it is finally what the impact of an output is, which should be measured. And I think it is high time with the companies align their policies to impact rather than number of hours. And we stop measuring 40 hours or 60 hours every week.
Right. Yeah, that's a really good point. And I think the whole hourly focus or focus on hours is a thing from the industrial age, right? Where at one point, employers were employing people for 15, 18 hours a day. So laws had to be put in place to have, a certain number of hours and then treat the rest as overtime and all that.
Yes.
And I think the person that brought sanity to the process was Henry Ford with his assembly line and 40-hour work week. And so then it just became a thing, 40-hour work week, right? And then you have this further classification in the United States as, if you're below a certain income level, you are what is deemed as non-exempt, meaning you have to report hourly how many hours you worked and all that. And there are rules around how much break time you need to have and all that. And then people above that are non-exempt, are exempt, which means that they're exempt from hourly reporting requirements. But yet, the corporate culture at large expects a certain number of hours, right? Which I don't blame, right? Like, I mean, you need to have hands on the keyboard to write code. But like you said, different people have different ways of producing their output. Some struggle, some just fly through it, right? To really hold a sense of fairness would be to work with the unique individual capability and provide support where needed, like you're doing at G10, where somebody needs like hands-on support, you bring them into the office, or you think that it's a very collaborative role that needs like all the time to be there, then you bring them in, whatever, right? So I think this is a very nuanced approach you're taking.
I think one company which I closely follow is 37 Signals. So
Yeah.
and these guys have phenomenal mindset around this specific topic. And I read both the books from the founders. I'm connected with them on LinkedIn, and You won't believe, I actually wrote a blind message to the founders when I was thinking about policies to adapt and implement at GTEN. And what people typically know about GTEN is that we are a services company. What is not known to a larger world is that we actually have a fairly successful product line as well, which is being used by the the top 50 Fortune 50 companies, our products in engineering space. And when we were setting up our engineering space, I reached out to 37 serial founders on LinkedIn as an email. I'm setting up a product arm in my services organization. They also actually started out as a services organization, a tech services organization. And I just gave that as a connect between what I'm trying to do at GTN versus what they've done in the past. And as a, what is the fundamental one line corporate culture or policy which you have? The response can be trust people to deliver. That one line actually communicates a lot about their thought process or how they treat individuals and their policies. Today, they have more than 30, 35 people, everyone working remote from different continent, different parts of the world, and still they build some of the most fantastic products used by millions of customers.
Right. Yeah, their revenue per employee is just a phenomenal number, I think. Well,
It's huge.
yeah. Wow, that's fascinating. So on a different topic, given your mentoring experience, mentoring people and people reaching out to mentor, um, receiving mentoring from you, what do you give as an advice to students considering engineering or exiting an engineering degree and looking for a career in tech?
I think my son is actually in the same stage right now. He's moving out of schooling, he's going to college next time. And I'll tell you what I keep on talking to him as well. This is again part of our dinner conversations with him. I asked him to work on three things to build himself a happy life. First, don't think anything as your final destination. Don't take anything as your final destination. In today's age and world, I think you should at least you and I never had that luxury, but the current generation has that luxury. For you to build a career in tech, choose a path to enter into tech, but that don't let it become a final destination. Keep on experimenting with different roles in tech till the time you have a final understanding of how the entire engineering life cycle works and what essentially aligns with your skills, your aspirations, and what you enjoy doing. Because typically people would start to bracket you as a developer, as a tester, as a DevOps or a cloud ops. Try to experiment as much as you can. Second, communication is your superpower. A lot of people in the tech industry believe or feel that I'm a coder, I'm a developer. It's okay if I don't communicate well. It's okay if I don't communicate at large. Probably that is okay if you are building a product as a single solopreneur. But if you're working in a group, communication is your superpower because you have to communicate to tell everyone A, what you're doing, and B, where you need help from others. That I think that is the thing. The third final thing is start small but go deep. A lot of people, while they're experimenting with different things, they only touch the surface of a skill. With that, you only get to know what exactly it is about, but you don't know whether you would like it or not. So that is again one advice which I give to everyone in my mentorship program is pick up a skill which you like today. Don't go by the trend because the fundamentals of engineering would always stay. Today, skill A is hot. Tomorrow, it may not be. But when you start on a skill, try to go deep in that skill before you make a decision whether it works for you or not.
Good. Those are really good pieces of advice, especially about not having a final destination right away, right? I think that simplifies a lot when it comes to a career. And
Yes.
oftentimes the mistake people can make early on is thinking this is the only thing, right? And that they cannot change course or like try something else. And I find it where I'm at right now in life, I can still change. I can still go to new destinations and try new things, right? And like the podcast is one such thing. Putting out content is another thing. Another thing I want to explore is mentoring people that I don't know. Right. So those are all things that I want to explore, and I think that is also very vital to freshness. Right. How do you keep yourself fresh? And it is also not a linear thing, right? Like human life is multifaceted, and you want to respect and honor all aspects of your life or your ability to create on different aspects of life.
True, true, absolutely true.
Good. So now, you have been somebody that has started, as an entrepreneur early on, and then went into corporate life, and then transitioned again into entrepreneurship with G10, right? So from your experience, do you think working as an employee for others is valuable as an experience when you end up starting your own venture?
I think, like I was mentioning to you, being an employee and has helped me a lot in my journey as an entrepreneur as well. I think it taught me three things. One, that the processes beat innovation at any point of time, because for you to scale anything, you need to have a well-defined process so that it can run on its own. I think that is one thing which the big corporates teach you really well in terms of how to establish a reliable, scalable process. The second, I think, that the biggest advantage which the big corporates gave me was connections. Working in the corporate for probably a little longer than I should have helped me build a lot of connections in the industry for with customers, with alliance partners and others. For me to rely on those connections now in my journey as well as an entrepreneur. And the third thing which the time I spent in corporate taught me was what not to do. So, what not to implement as processes, practices, or policies when I start uh, my own venture. You won't believe, in our company we don't have an HR department. There's no HR department at all. It's not that I hate HR professionals. I don't appreciate the value they bring. It's just that I wanted the policies to be more driven by the employees or collaborators themselves in G10, rather than somebody from sitting in a department who does not really understand the day in day out work style of a individual with a different skill set, define how he should work. So today at G10, most of our policies are discussed, collaborated on, and then we agree on, okay, this is what we want to implement as a process or as a policy. So one thing which I had a lot of fight during my corporate career also was, why do we have a HR department? Why don't we have a human function or a people function? A lot of people say it's only a verbiage difference, but that verbiage means a lot, because when you talk about resources, and that is the term I hate a lot. When you talk about resources, I'm not on a table or a chair or a laptop in the office. I'm a human contributing to a goal. That is what we focus on, is having a people's department, not a HR department in the organization. And as of now, we even don't have that. People self collaborate, self define policies, and self govern.
Wow.
Because one thing which I believe, which Steve Jobs mentioned, that you don't hire smart people and then tell them what to do and how to do it. Give them the freedom to figure it out themselves. That is what we believe in our company. So I think that is my takeaway from my 2.5 decades of long career. It helped me build connections. It helped me understand how to build processes which scale, and it helped me understand what not to do.
Good. I love that. The anti patterns are very valuable, right? And I also, based on what you're saying, if the policies are being set by everybody, meaning collaboratively, you probably have good employee retention, I suppose.
Correct. Our average employee attrition rate for the last 4 years is 3%.
Wow, that's phenomenal.
So, and a lot of people who started with us, and I think that is my biggest earning out of G10, like you were mentioning in the beginning, is the impact we have created on the lives of people. And GTEN itself has led to people starting out their own businesses, their own ventures. I invest in those ventures myself. We own equity in most of those ventures today as well. But it actually gave the people a way of thinking that they can build something of their own. And one more thing about GTEN is a lot of our employees come from small towns, come from small cities. People who are typically overlooked by big corporates to hire. And in my learning, and something again which the company taught me, the people in the company taught me, was that you don't hire somebody only by the degree they bring. You hire somebody by the fight they bring to the table, or by the energy they bring to the table. So a lot of these guys who we have hired from tier two, tier three towns in India with no proper, I would say, communication skills, they have developed it over a period of time. But they are one of my top performers today. They are the ones who actually even went out and built their own enterprises right now, where we are part of it. So I think that is again one big thing which I learned as a leader from my team.
Wow. The more I hear about your leadership approach, it is turning out to be more and more of a remarkable thing and a very unique approach. It's how it's interesting how the media only talks about some of these big entrepreneurs who made it big, right? Like the Steve Jobs and Bezos and how their thoughts were different. But here I am interviewing you. While you're not at that stature, you have your own success stories. You have created multiple success stories for others that have come into your path, right? Come through your path or along with your path. And I find as much uniqueness as in like you think differently than the majority. And you're creating your own unique design pattern or whatever you want to call it, like your own unique weaving of the cloth or the fabric of life through your venture and how you do the venture and how you nurture new entrepreneurs. And it's phenomenal that you're actually investing in employees who end up starting their own ventures. That's, I mean, after they've started, it's like being part of their success, actually
Yes.
telling them it's okay to be successful. And I bless you with some investment.
And one more thing about corporate, a tagline which we don't follow is every corporate pass on a messaging that we are a family. I completely hate that line. So in our company, we never say that we are one family. We are one family. We are collaborators on a path. Some of us will go the complete distance together. Some of us will go a part of that distance together. But we all are collaborating on a common journey to some point of time in our life. The challenge with the word, using the word family is every family has its own issues, right? And in a family, what I've always felt is people in a family are not always very open and honest with each other because to accommodate the other guy, you would always try to either play below your par or probably see it in the background but not say something in front. Whereas what I like with my team is be open with your feedback, be harsh with your feedback, but at the end of the day, fix whatever issues you have internally and then collaborate to a common journey to success.
That's a very, very refreshing insight about the dynamics of an organization and the dynamics of a family and why the two don't really match up as a term. And that is true. In a family, you try to accommodate as much as you can to make sure it stays together. But that may not be the best in a corporate setting where you want the best idea to win, even if that means having a difficult discussion, a harsh discussion, or being very forthright.
And again, this is again Pradeep, a lesson I learned in my first tenure as a leader that because typically in corporate, everybody measures the importance of an individual by the number of years they carry. One thing which I learned was I can be doing the same thing for 10 years and I can say I have 10 years of corporate experience or I can do 10 different things in 1 year. Both don't match. So it's again, so that is why our theme also as a company is we measure our outcomes by our value. what value we deliver or impact we create for our customers. So in our company, though we have designations, but there's no formal hierarchy. It's a very flat organization where anybody and everyone is open to give their input, suggestions, and ideas. Go ahead and implement them, and nobody can basically put down the other guy only because I have 5 years more experience than you. No. Did you bring an idea to the table? No. This guy brought an idea to the table. It may work, it may not work. That doesn't matter.
Wow, nice. So in fun and closing, more like questions around, focused around your own personal self rather than the overall business. So how has your career in tech influenced your life outside of work?
Oh, very bad.
Very
Because now,
badly?
very badly, because the point is, wherever I go, the consulting mindset kicks in immediately. And being a tester also, like I've played pretty much most of the roles in engineering. That is how I experimented throughout my career. And I've been a tester for a long time. Now, being a tester, your mind automatically goes towards finding things which are not working correctly or the way they should have worked. And as a compulsive nature, you end up telling the other guy that I believe these things should improve or work in your uh, organization, in your restaurant, in your tech ecosystem, and that just comes so naturally that you end up telling the other guy, even at times you should not.
Mm,
So, so that I think I will say the fun part of it is being a tester and being in tech. Everywhere you go, you try to find out okay how you can improve this thing which is happening around you, which at
right.
times becomes a little annoying for my kids.
Understand. Um, yeah, I've had that too over the years. I've started to now tame it down, but it still comes out. Even in an organizational setting, right? When I see something doesn't make sense, I just speak out because just from that engineering mindset, you don't see how everything fits together, and then you just voice that. Um, but it's interesting that you say that it comes out badly, as in like it has had a negative connotation to it. Though in the end, it's probably for everyone's benefit that you're pointing out that hey, these things need to improve or can be done better. Yeah, cool. So now, if you weren't in tech building software, what might you have done differently as a career path?
I think if I would not have been in tech, I would probably be doing something related to tech only, as I realize it now, because I think one thing which I fundamentally always believed during my first journey also as an entrepreneur was to how to scale things, how to basically build systems and use things with limited resources to scale. But two sectors which truly like get my attention all the time and where I invest heavily as well. One of them is healthcare. So I probably would have ended up doing something in the healthcare space. Or the other thing which I like is sustainability. So again, when I talk about sustainability, uh, I've been as part of my charity organization, we support initiatives around reviving the old water bodies in and around our neighborhood. The
Wow,
second thing which we do every year, we plant almost 1,000 plus trees every year in our neighborhood. So again, I think I probably would have uh, built something around those areas as a business or as a organization to go with.
that's remarkable. I follow Better India on LinkedIn, and it surfaces a lot of such community based positive actions. And it's so fantastic to see how community action makes such a huge difference to quality of
Absolutely,
life.
absolutely.
Yeah. So I'm glad to see that you're actually doing that yourself personally. And that's remarkable. I think one of the other things of note is traditionally the culture in India has always been one of sustainability, right?
Yes,
Like if you look at like we used before plastics became a thing, we used leaves, right?
correct.
Plantain leaves or lotus leaves or whatever as packaging mechanisms,
True,
right? And then paper came along, but the whole thing was biodegradable to begin with.
true, true. And the West is adopting it now. In fact, I'm not sure if
Yes.
you saw that news. One of the corporates in Germany was trying to patent the same packaging concept which you just mentioned using leaves. They're trying to patent that as a technology originated in Germany, whereas we have been using it for like since the beginning of our civilization in India.
Right. Exactly. So it's really heartening to see that there is a strong coming back of the core cultural values of sustainability and responsibility for the environment. I mean, even if you look at like how uh, the ponds in the temple exist, right? They exist as a source of water source, to help, be a reflection of the water table. And I find that in different localities around the country, they're reviving the water table, and these temple ponds are like now back to life. And it's so remarkable seeing like in the 90s, having seen the degradation, and now seeing things coming back to life just by going back to common sense and a fundamental sense of responsibility and just logical thinking, I guess. Right, all of these is I think help the country go back to where it was at one point in time, and then it went off track, and then it's now back on track, kind of feel.
No, definitely. I think the corporates also in India are picking up that responsibility to fund these projects because all of these projects are huge money investments. They require money and the manpower. And thankfully, because of the government of India initiative and a law, the corporates in India are also spending their CSR funds into such activities. Now, plantation, reviving of water bodies, all those initiatives are actually gaining speed now in the last 4 or 5 years.
Interesting. So is that like a tax credit or something given for spending?
Any large corporate in India has to keep, I think, 2.5 or 3% of their profits as CSR fund, corporate social responsibility funds.
Wow.
And the corporate can decide where they spend this amount. But I think originally people were doing a lot of different ways to pull back that money into the corporate. But now I think with more closer audits, closer checking, and the need for corporates also to showcase themselves in a more cleaner, better image, I think a lot of those funding is coming back
Lovely.
into the right initiatives.
Nice. So is that a question you wish I had asked you today? And if so, what is it?
I think one question which I believe which we could have delved into more and discussed is, and one thing which I wanted to actually ask you as well, being in the US for such a long time, is India has always positioned itself as the back office of the world. I think, but now in the last, I would say, a decade, and more predominant in the last 6 7 years, India has is also becoming the SaaS capital of the world. A lot of large SaaS organizations like Freshworks, Cashflow, Zoho, multiple organizations are coming out of India now. What do you think, being in the US, being in the thick of things in the US for almost 2 decades now? Do you think that is the natural transition which India has taken into from being a services to a more product focused organization? And the reason I'm asking that question is not only because all these SaaS products which are coming out of India, what I've noticed as a change, because we work with a lot of these, like I mentioned, OEMs, also like Cisco, Microsoft, and SAP and all. I'm seeing that their way of transitioning or giving ownership of work to their Indian offices now is not any longer about bug fixing, support tickets. A lot of these new product lines are also coming out for these corporates from India, from their Indian centers.
Right.
What is your take on that topic? I think that is one thing which typically I've not seen a lot of people addressing or talking about in podcast uh, focused around tech in India. But I think that is a question which has to be properly asked, and the messaging around has to be like I said, propagated that has that 10x ripple effect to change
Yeah,
the mindset of India.
totally. It is a natural evolution, right? To initially, when you don't have a strong domestic market, to go out and find business elsewhere and provide services. I think that's how the Indian tech industry started. Because back in the 90s, we were just coming out of very tight governmental controls and the economy was stifled, right? So obviously the domestic consumption was lower. So people ended up going abroad or going abroad and getting contracts and coming back and setting up shops and stuff. And then the question I think I remember reading about 10 years ago or so that India has to start developing its own domestic market if it is to be sustainable. And we've already seen that, right? Like one big thing, though this is a government app, is the UPI. It's a
Yes,
unique solution that no other country has really accomplished, to my knowledge. And low transaction cost, high uptime. I mean, just think about the engineering marvel behind it. Now, how could you say that India is not at the forefront of technology when you have tremendously high usage, tremendously high reliability, and just wide adoption? Like,
yes,
street vendors using it, right? Small transactions. I mean, everything that the West is talking about has already been done.
yes.
And nobody talks about that, the fact that it has been done, right?
Correct.
And I think India has this unique mix of government directed innovation and also government providing a sort of what do you call it guardrails to innovation. Whereas out here in the United States, you don't have that. Anybody can do anything, even if it is harmful or detrimental, right? In a capitalistic system, which is always looking at ROI, it's always a race to the bottom in terms of how efficient can I get, right? So you look at Amazon, for example, it Amazon Marketplace. You know, it's like great for people to start a small business, but then it also becomes Amazon itself competes with it. Oh, here's a great product category that these guys have found. Let me just now go source it and sell it myself as Amazon Basics, right?
Correct.
I mean, that's to me, it's unfair. Whether it's ethical or not is going to be based on an individual's perspective of what ethics is, right? So some might consider it totally ethical, some might consider it not so ethical. But then you look at the government of India, there is a whole initiative, I forgot the exact name of it, to enable e-commerce in a neutral way.
ONDC,
ONDC, yeah. So, and what does it stand for?
Open Network Distribution Channel.
There you go. So see, that's, I think, India experimented with socialism for decades and failed. But then there are certain good aspects out of it that has just moved over into the capitalistic model, right? Things that are going to be foundational, like the payment systems, the e-commerce systems, right? You don't want any individual entity controlling it. You want a
Correct.
level playing field. And I think India is going to stand out because of that in terms of what it will enable as innovation and also what it will enable as a point of fairness that will allow small players to continue to come about and continue to succeed, right? That I think in the West is going, it's always like consolidation in the West into single big large entities and these huge billionaires and success stories. Not that India doesn't have billionaires, it has tons of billionaires now, especially in the last 20, 30 years, it has added more billionaires, right? But I think it is also, like you can see the CSR that you mentioned, the corporate social responsibility. I mean, it might look socialist, but is it? I mean, if it is, so what? Because it is being done for the greater good and it is out of your profitability, not out of your revenue,
Correct.
right? So it's not a tax and it's sort of enforced goodness. But then, if a government, the purpose of a government, I think, is to ensure that the fruits of production is enjoyed by everyone and we overall uplift the entirety of society and not just a select few elements, right? I think 50 years out, now India has two things going for it. One is the population, and the other thing is the fact that there is governmental guidance or control over innovation, and as well as a strong domestic market. There are so many products that are services that are just India only. Started out in India and then went on to capture other markets. So I think the perception is, if anything, it's going to start coming the other way, right? And it has already started. There's already venture capital flowing in from abroad for Indian startups. Um, and I think that trend is just going to continue, where the brand of India as an innovation hub and as a provider of, I would say, even new thought about how something can be done. I mean, the UPI is one example, the ONDC is another example. I'm sure there's going to be other things. I would like to see the government of India do something about AI, which again sets an example of how AI should be done. So we'll see.
I think one thing which probably is not very much publicized right now is what the government is building right now is 10 times bigger than UPI, at
Oh,
least, if not bigger. What they're basically doing is similar to UPI. They're creating a health API for
wow.
entire population of India, which basically again democratizes the entire health tech industry and the health infrastructure in India, where all your health related information is not openly available, is controlled and encrypted by the government, but you as an individual have full access to it for your complete medical history. Because I think a lot of people in India, including me, we don't preserve or maintain all the health checkup information which we do over a period of time. We would go visit a doctor for some ailment, we will take some medications or run some tests, but nobody bothers to carry or preserve that information for the next one. And as you know, in healthcare, your previous ailments can actually be the starting point of what you're facing today as a big health issue. So Government of India is building that health API which connects all this information. So the next time you visit anyone, you have a complete medical history available with you.
Yeah, that's phenomenal. And you'd think the West actually done a better job, but it hasn't.
It
Uh,
has
it hasn't. So the health records, yeah, the health records is. Oh, wonder why? I think it's a disconnect between intention and execution, right? So that's where I think when you have foundational services built by government, it would actually be a good thing. But that's again a difference in ethos between the U.S. and the Indian systems, right? In India, our ethos has primarily been one of the society, right?
yes,
The cultural fabric is built around the concept of what is good for the community, how to make things work for the community, how to, that is how we survived for millennia, right? And whereas on the West, you have the strong individualism,
correct,
especially in the United States Constitution, which emphasizes the Bill of Rights and everything. But I think you know it's a difference of where do you draw the line between individuality and social responsibility, right? And I think it has to come as a culture, and I think India naturally has that culture, and I think it is going to actually help produce new innovations that will not be possible in the West, simply because of a different ethos and a different mindset that India possesses.
absolutely true. And, and that is again the reason why I said, like, uh, coming from India, coming from tech, I think a lot of people, like you mentioned, UPI, when I explain the entire scope and the depth and the breadth of UPI as a technology, a lot of our payment tech customers, like we work a lot in payment tech space, they are just amazed of how you guys could have built it, because now we're not talking about few million transactions. We're talking about hundreds of millions of transactions happening every day on UPI. And like you mentioned, that from transaction as small as a rupee to as big as which is available. And now UPI as actually as a technology has gone global. So Indian government is now implementing UPI for cross country transaction,
Yeah,
and it's already been adopted by a lot of countries in West, like in Europe, Southeast Asia, Middle East. That enables people like me, Indian travelers, to go anywhere in the world and use UPI to perform transactions.
Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah,
sir.
that's the undercut to when you're India is going to be a disruptor, plain and
Yes,
simple. That's how I would say it. If
correct.
you look at how companies disrupt existing players, India as a nation is a disruptor in the community of nations, not in a disruptive way, but in an innovative way.
Correct.
And it'll do that simply by doing technology in a pragmatic, quiet way, right? Like UPI was never really publicized as a big deal.
Yes,
Yeah, it is still an undersold story, I think. But yeah,
correct. It is definitely a industrial story.
yeah. Well, one thing that I wanted to ask you. You mentioned that you have products in G10 that are used by Fortune 50. What are some products that you have? Just curious.
So we have built products around the engineering space right now, which I'll not say AI just for the sake of saying AI, but with the algorithms in the core fundamentals of the product itself. So one of our product is all about test efficiencies. So the way the product goes, and this is again came out of a pain point I felt all along for the last 2 decades that, and you must have used a ton of test case documentation tools all along the way. Those tools do a good job, but most of them end up being just a test case repository. They don't give you any intelligence about where you are not doing a good job as an engineering organization from quality standpoint. So what we're building in G10 is a gains as a platform, which essentially starts as giving you a boilerplate process to be implemented across the engineering organization and how you think about testing, bringing the right framework and thought process around testing. That is, okay, you have to think about testing from a pyramid perspective. You have to align your testing to your technology architecture and then capture details around your test cases. As you start putting in the test cases on gains and you start executing the test case from grains, the algorithm in the backend starts optimizing your test suits. In a lot of organizations in my consulting journey, I've seen test suits grow from 100 test cases to 10,000, 20,000 test cases over a period of time because nobody ever spent time to look at it. What are the stale, redundant, duplicate test cases and remove it to get the right count of or inventory of test cases. And I would blame services organization to be a part of that problem because for a lot of services organizations, they estimate their effort for hours and manpower based on this data on the number of test cases. So in gains, our algorithms keep on listening and watching what you're doing from a testing standpoint. And then we have an intelligence feature which automatically curates a more comprehensive and compressed test suite from what you already have. Because what we also learn is that you're executing these test cases, but you're logging defects outside these test cases. So we are not only watching what you're testing, we're also learning from what you're logging as issues, as defects, and what your customers are logging as support tickets. So now we have this complete dimensional information to identify what you're missing from your testing right now, and B, what you're over executing to compress and create more comprehensive. So for one of our customers recently, we reduced their test suite size by 80%.
Wow.
And after reducing it, the first feedback which we got from the testing guys was that you are exposing us to more risk because now we will test less. But when we converted the new test case suite into a mind map visualization mapped with the business functionality and did the same exercise with their existing test suite, what came out was what Gaines built was actually doing 60% more coverage than the previous one at 80% less test cases
That's faster time to market and more confidence in the quality
and less cost.
at less
Less
cost.
cost.
Yes. Yeah.
And plus, once you've removed that 80%, all the effort which you are spending on automating those test cases, which are not even relevant, can be now spent on more productive activities. And that is why I was saying in the beginning that we need to look at AI of where it actually makes a larger impact. Generating more test cases is Good, but is it required? I already have too many.
Right.
Why don't I use it to reduce what I have? So this is one of the products which we have built in G10. The other product which we have was again came from one of our problem statement which I've been dealing in for a decade is the technology has changed in the last decade, but people still use tools like JMeter and others to do performance testing. We need to move from performance testing to performance engineering. And this entire thing, user experience is a bigger play, is a very big play. Because the way the technology has changed with cloud and with the modern day JavaScript frameworks, the end customer's experience is not determined only by the network speed or my hardware as a software company. It is also determined by the customer's machine, their capacity, their browser, and how efficiently I'm able to use the browser's memory and my JavaScript code stack. This is where we built another platform in G10 for gains performance experience. So the name of the platform itself is performance experience to calculate the end user's experience at every stage. So we break down the end user experience step by step from how the content is being showcased to the user on his browser or mobile app till the last point to the database on the server. So at every stage, you have the complete data available in 32 different combinations of the same data being shown to an engineering leadership of what impact it can create.
Wow.
In the same four metrics, but we have combined them in 32 different ways to tell you how changing one element can impact the other one.
Wow. Phenomenal. These are really good products.
That is why I said we are not publicize this too much. You don't see me talking about our anyone talking about our products, and that is why not a lot of people know about the products we are building in G10. But slowly, all these products started out as experimentation projects with our customers, implemented one of them. As they gained benefit, they started sharing their experiences with others, which allowed us to grow, but from one customer to the next and learn from it.
Got it. Phenomenal. All right, because it was a real pleasure having you on the podcast. Appreciate it.
Thanks for inviting me.
You're very welcome.
Thank you for listening. I hope you found this episode insightful. Join me for the next episode in 2 weeks where I interview another guest.